Sir Ketemile Masire. How come that Botswana became independent from the British?
Botswana became independent from the British because in the first instance, we are not a colony in a conventional sense. Our forefathers asked for the British protection because we were threatened by advance from John Cecil Rhodes from the south and Paul Kruger from the Transvaal. And so our chiefs designated 3 chiefs to go to see Queen Victoria to grant us protection. And therefore, with the decolonization in the air and our people realizing that they can now manage their own affairs, we negotiated with the British to get our independence. And that was, it was not a big deal to go to the British to grant protection, and it was really not a big deal to get up our independence back. Fortunately, we didn't have resources that could have attracted British settlers to come and settle here to exploit, and therefore there was no problem with the whites that were in the country.
And do you remember what it was like that very day when Botswana became independent?
Oh, as if it happened yesterday. I had taken part in constitutional talks, both here and in Britain, and it was therefore something I could have seen coming up, and it was therefore a happy conclusion for a happy ending to a very successful negotiations.
What do you think that the early history of Botswana in the 1960s has meant in forming the Botswana that exists today?
Well, I can see a number of things that happened which account for what Botswana is today. First of all, the political party that we formed, which eventually ruled the country, was democratic in attitude. We always envisaged the country to be a multi-party state, and therefore we did not do things as if we should be doing them every day, all the time. We knew other people could come in just as the Botswana would decide, and we therefore created an atmosphere of live and let live. We treated other parties as we would like them to treat us when we were in the opposition. Secondly, we were made wiser by what has happened in other countries, where mineral resources became a curse for the country instead of being a blessing for the country. It was a time when the wars in Katanga and other places were raging, and so the first thing we went for was to make sure that if we were to discover any minerals anywhere in the country, that it should be for the benefit of the whole country instead of a region or an individual. And so we went round, even just on the verge of independence. We had a period of a year when we had self-rule. And during that self-rule, we negotiated with the chiefs that when we became independent, all the mineral rights would belong to the state and the chiefs agreed, fortunately, because none of them had any minerals to fight for. And so it was when the diamonds were discovered and copper nickel was discovered and so forth, it was the understanding of the whole nation that it was a blessing for the country rather than for the tribe in which area the minerals were discovered. I would say that these are really the key points that made us what we are today.
How did you manage to get the liberation to be so conflict-free?
It was conflict-free partly because we were a protectorate, not a colony. If we had been captured by John Cecil Rhodes, it would have been different. It would be like would have been like Rhodesia. And therefore, because it was freely negotiated to be a protectorate, it was freely negotiated to be an independent state. And we also didn't imagine, like King Kizot, fighting battles that were no battles. We knew the British were not particularly keen to be running this country because it was really the British taxpayer that was paying for the country instead of resources from Botswana being used by Britain. So the negotiations were very peaceful, and I would say that we were in a sense a good riddance because I suppose the British were always worried how we were going to find resources to run us.
Many other African countries has had and still has struggles with problems of conflict and war. Why isn't that the case for Botswana?
It is so for Botswana because in the first place we got our independence without fighting for it as such, and two, because we were wise enough at the beginning to have had a democratic attitude, attitude of live and let live, an attitude which it's ingrained actually in our traditional way of running affairs, where we let everybody talk as he feels and thinks, and at the end of a Khotla meeting, a consensus is built, and the chief sums up that consensus, and it's not just a question of the chief doing what he feels, or the strong man in the group having his way.
So would you say that Botswana is a success story?
Well, by all accounts, it is. I know self-praise is no recommendation, but what encourages us is not that because we think we are making a success, but internationally we are acknowledged as success. Internationally, the organizations that do monitoring of states' performance, such as Transparency International, the Moody Report, all agree that we are a success story.
What is the Khotla, and what has it meant for the development of the democracy here?
The Khotla is an assembly of a tribe to discuss its affairs. It is it can meet as a court, it can meet as a parliament, it can meet as a social gathering. It's really a pivotal point for for managing the affairs of a tribe, and that has been translated now into managing the affairs of the nation.
Okay. Have you read any of the #1 ladies detective books?
Yes, I have read the 6 of them.
And what do you think about them?
Oh, they're marvelous. And they really capture the milieu, the way things happen in Botswana.
Okay, yeah, okay. What kind of picture do you think that other countries get to see when Alexander McCall Smith is writing about the books?
Well, I think they really admire Botswana because they admire the stories that McCall Smith has written, and I think it's going to improve our tourism because people will want to know where these things have happened, and I think in the pictures from the books they have a sense of what's happening in Botswana.
And in the books, your friend and predecessor, Sir Seretse Khama, is often mentioned as someone to whom people look up to. Is that still a reality here?
Yeah, it's very much a reality, yes. He really has left his footprints in the sands of time.
And what was it with Sir Seretse Khama that made him so special?
I think the man's nature. He was a Democrat by nature, although born of chiefly origin. He was a real Democrat. He shared his views with the other people. He used his ministers as colleagues. I remember one of his expressions was a good general is one who has good lieutenants, and he really made sure that whoever worked with him was a good lieutenant, and he gave him the opportunity to show his worth.
And lastly, what effect do you think that the books and now this Hollywood film that's being made, what effects do you think they will have on Botswana and making Botswana known?
I think it will have the effect of getting a good story. Fortunately, Botswana is a good story to tell, and therefore it only needs a good narrator to tell that story. And we are fortunate in finding McCall Smith to tell that story.
What is this? Are these books and the film? What is it going to do for Botswana in the future? Do you think?
Well, I think it is going to whet appetite for Botswana. People will want to see what Botswana is like, to personally experience the goings on there, as well as, of course, making Botswana that they will not disappoint people when they come here. They live up to the expectation that those who have read the book will have made.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.